Hello, my name is Kelsea Thrower, and this is my observation video for Ms. Vaughn's Child Growth Internet Assisted class. My first observation site was at Hardin Elementary in the Whitehall School District. At this site, I did my kindergarten, first grade, and second grade observation. For kindergarten, I observed in Ms. Bullock's classroom. I learned everything about this classroom. Every aspect of everything she did, I loved the way she did it. There was 14 students present, and there was one other adult in the classroom, which seemed to work more one-on-one with a specific student. Miss Bullock worked very well with her students, and she allowed them to get up and move around quite often during the class. I think I was there for an hour, and I think they got up for 2 or 3 times within the hour. This seemed to have positive reflect on the students and helped them relax for a few minutes before going into a new subject. For my first grade observation, I observed in Miss Oldner's classroom. This classroom was not as laid back as the previous, but which is expected. The students are older, they're expected to do more and be able to sit longer. They're experienced with the school. There were 17 students present in this room. This seemed to allow more one-on-one time with Miss Oldner and each specific student. The only thing I really didn't like about this classroom is when they sat down to do carpet time, you could tell the kids were not interested because it was repetitive things they do every day, like counting by 10, saying the alphabet, ending sounds, beginning sounds. But besides that, this classroom was ran very well. For my second grade observation, I observed in Miss Ferris's classroom. When I got to Miss Ferris's classroom, the students were not there yet. We had to go get them from their activity. We had 24 students, and I was told this was the largest classroom in the school, and if anybody could handle it, Miss Ferris was the one to do it. All of these students made it difficult for more one-on-one time with Miss Ferris and a specific student, but she did it in a way, her classroom was set up in a way that made it easier for her to work with multiple students at one time. So she showed lots of professionalism when it came to, if one person had a question, they were set in 2 or 3, or groups of 2 or 3 or 4, that when they did have a question, she could go help explain it to 3 or 4 students at a time, which made it seem a lot more professional, a lot easier for her. My second observation site was at Gandy Elementary, which is also in the Whitehall School District. At this school, I did my 3rd and 4th grade observation. For my 3rd grade observation, I observed in Miss Lawson's classroom. This classroom was very laid back, and there was about 20 kids in this classroom. They were very talkative and very rowdy, which was allowed for about the first 20 minutes, and then after that, Miss Lawson used her stoplight tactic to quiet them down. This was a large handmade stoplight that she would place a sticker or a clothespin on to tell the students where they were in the classroom. Yellow meant they were cautioned, and if they didn't quiet down soon enough, the red would come out and all talking would be ceased. Green meant they were free to talk all the time. For my 4th grade observation, I observed in Miss Morris's classroom. There were 22 students present, and they were all very well behaved. This was by far the most well-behaved class I observed the entire time. I really liked the way this classroom was set up. It was set up in a way that the desks were all pointed directly at the teacher and the board, so nobody had to strain to look at the board. She did lots of her work on the projector, like most teachers do. She also seemed to have some type of random select program. She was constantly clicking on her computer, saying that the pop-up names for her to choose, whether they raised their hands or not. She was going to ask them a question to make sure they understood the problems. My third observation site was at Mayflower Middle School in the Mayflower School District. I did my 5th and 6th grade observations here. My 5th grade observation was in Miss Sutton's science class. This classroom had 14 students present, and this class was very tiny, as the classroom itself was tiny. So the 15 people, 16 people in the classroom made it seem very, very cramped. And her desks were large desks with 3 or 4 students at each table. So it made it very hard to move around, but she seemed very organized and everybody knew where to go. This class started out very disciplined and everybody knew what they were supposed to do, but then a bell rang and the students went to what is called power break. This consisted of a snack and a juice and a 20-minute break. This 20-minute break was way too much for these kids. They were allowed to have cell phones, talk, do everything during this time like they weren't even in school. I believe the idea for this is a very good idea, but 20 minutes is just way too long. They get too far off course to be brought back and focused back on what they want. When the power break was over, they returned to class, and we had 10 minutes left, and it was obvious the kids had no interest in finishing what they had started because they just had almost a half hour off. I wouldn't want to do anything either. For my 6th grade observation, I was in Miss Burgess' science classroom. This classroom had 12 students in it, and they were when I entered, they were very rambunctious and talkative, but Miss Burgess was doing a notebook check. I found it very strange at how this classroom was set out. There was 3 rows of tables that had like 3 or 4 tables each in it. They were set very far back from the board and very far back from Miss Burgess' desk and her computer where she works every day, and which seemed very strange, but I later found out that she's extreme germaphobe, so I guess on her behalf that makes her feel more comfortable. But I can also see where that could reflect bad on students. If a student has a visual problem or a hearing disability, it could cause a deficit for these students, which is obviously not what any teacher wants. For my last observation site, this was by far my favorite. I went to the Arkansas School for the Deaf. During this observation, I observed in Miss Carrie Johnson's classroom. This classroom only had 4 students present, and with one being in a wheelchair. There was one other adult in the classroom who I never got a name of, but she seemed to work more directly with the student in the wheelchair, but was helpful with all of the students. She was also a deaf person. Miss Johnson did a very good job at helping me during this observation. She worked with the students, but while she was doing that, she went beyond her way to help explain things to me. Since I myself don't know sign language, it was very difficult for me trying to understand what they were talking about. But she did a very good job at helping me, and I'm very appreciative for that. Out of all of my observation sites, Hardin Elementary was the most easiest to get a hold of and the most ready for me to get there. I was introduced to all of the teachers I observed before I started, and they were by far ready for me to go. Gainey Elementary was very difficult to get a hold of, or very easy to get a hold of, but difficult to make an appointment. I set an appointment and I got a phone call saying that he had messed up and I had to come to at a different time. He sent me a day where the students weren't even going to be at school, so I couldn't go that day. But once I got there, once I got to the school, none of the office ladies were expecting me, and nobody knew where I was supposed to go. Once I met the principal, he was very apologetic for the mistakes he had made and helped me very much throughout this time. Mayflower Middle School was very, very difficult to get a hold of. I had to email many times to get a hold of who I needed to, and when I did show up, Nobody knew I was coming. The teachers had no idea what I was doing there. The principal was not even present. He was off at a golf tournament or something, is what they told me. The teachers were very welcoming and had no problem with me being there, but they said they would have liked to know if I was coming. They would have planned something to make sure I got what I needed. And my last observation was very easy to get a hold of. I had no problems getting in or getting out. They were the most friendliest people ever. Thank you.